It's Tony Tonkin here again from the Child Protection Party. What we plan to do is each day, where necessary, well, probably not each day, but often when there's new information in relation to the 6-year-old who died on Friday, her name is Charlie, we're going to report back to you about where the government stands, what action's been taken by the police, and whether or not the government has chosen to be completely transparent, or whether they're waiting for a coronial inquest before they actually get either caught out or talk about the issues that have brought about this child's death. Now, one of the most important articles that came out, I think, was the fact that there was a whistleblower, clearly from the department, who has declared that there were up to 500 case notes made about this child. What I find disturbing about that is that I've worked with clients where there's been 4, 5, 6 notifications made, and that particular child or children have been removed from the parent. Nothing quite like we would have imagined with this particular family, given the information that we already know. Number one, the house was in a mess. Number two, the father of the child was convicted of violence and abuse against the family member and has since been jailed for those offences. And secondly, one wonders about what other things may sit around all of this, including the mother's mental well-being. So what is it did they know? Why didn't they tell us? Why didn't they act early enough in order to protect this child? Now, the whistleblower who's come out, who I assume is someone from the department, who must be because they knew about the documents on their C3 computer, certainly must have been concerned enough to be able to raise this issue directly with the newspaper or whoever they disclosed this information to. So they were concerned enough to think, well, okay, the department did know about this. A child has died as a result of the inaction of the department, and they're going to let somebody know anonymously that there were a whole host of case notes. 500 case notes is 500 separate instances where people have notified or written about in some form or another this particular family. Yet the department has chosen not to respond. Now, there's some interesting things that have come out of this, and I'll just refer to the article, and I might need to have to bring this up a little bit closer, so I hope everybody can read this. So whistleblower says Charlie Munro Parra family had more than 500 case notes, and it goes on to say four government agencies, so 4 agencies knew about what was happening here: the Department of Human Services, SA Housing Authority, Department of Education, and the Department of Child Protection, plus, I would suggest, some NGOs who might have had involvement with the family as well. And one would be asking, if there weren't other agencies involved, why not? And so they had contact with the family of a 6-year-old girl who died of suspected neglect. Now, malnutrition is the official cause of Charlie's death, but other details remain largely unknown, with Child Protection Minister Katrina Hildyard refusing to answer questions because of concerns the police investigation would be affected. That's a load of crap. I think at some level I feel for the minister, because she hasn't been there for very long. She didn't have control over the department when these issues were happening. They've been happening for a couple of years, as Susan Close has declared yesterday. Then one can assume that this is not necessarily her problem, even though it happened on her watch. So, this is an opportunity to start to clean out the department, to start to decide what is effective within the department, what isn't, what workers are appropriate and who aren't, and to find ways to get rid of those who just simply compromise the system, as this particular situation tells us. So clearly, people made decisions, inappropriate decisions around this family that resulted in a child's death. The question for me is, how are they kept accountable for those decisions? The whistleblower who agreed to speak on the conditions of anonymity, no wonder, said notes on the case management system C3 reveals a child well-being case manager visited the family home and found her with her eyes closed. One would wonder, there's a beautiful picture of this kid too, and it's It's distressing when you see a child like this and she's no longer with us. I find it extremely sad and distressing. The worker attempted to encourage Charlie to attend a school by telling her there are animals there that she could play with, but she did not respond. Now, this information must have come from this anonymous tip-off, I would assume. No way in the world the newspaper got hold of all of this information. Later, as the worker was speaking to Charlie's mother before departing the home, another child called out that Charlie had vomited, and her mother entered the conversation, indicating she would tend to her daughter. No follow-up correspondence with the family regarding Charlie's well-being was recorded on the C3 system, it is claimed. So they were told this. The whistleblower said there were more than 500 case notes on the family, with school attendance the main concern. Often, in my experience, a child not attending school is a clear indication that there's something that needs to be addressed in relation to what's happening at the home. And I've known families where kids have been removed, primarily because they haven't been attending school, because the home is in a mess, and because families just aren't coping with life generally. That's the reason why they've been removed. Now, there are plenty of indicators clearly that Charlie was a distressed kid. You turn up to a home and you find a kid who's unable to open their eyes, who's obviously limp, who's kind of weak. You would suspect that there's something wrong, and why wouldn't you therefore ask for an ambulance to be called to have this kid taken to hospital, or at least have a medical practitioner in attendance? Clearly none of that was done, because for some reason they didn't think it important enough to be able to do that. Now, the question for me, and for all of us hopefully, is how do we respond to that? What is it that we need to do to make the department more responsible? Why is it that every time we have a death, or we have something as outrageous as the Parafield Gardens House of Horrors, why do we have to wait till something so drastic happens before we choose to respond? Now, this is appearing now on the front first and second pages of the newspaper. It will eventually find its way to the third, fourth, fifth, and so on, until it completely disappears. Because generally the community don't give a rat's ass about what's happening for kids unless it appears on the front page. There are many families in distress. There are many families who need our help, who need the community to step up and to help them where possible. Make notifications so the department knows about them, so they can appropriately intervene and help these families to survive through whatever trauma they've either experienced or are experiencing now, so that kids can remain with their families. But no, they don't. They either don't get involved for whatever reason, and we'll be interested to find out the reasons why they chose not to get involved in this Manapara family. But you know, why is it that they don't? What decisions do they make? What is their decision process? I know that the department supposedly has a system whereby they go through and they check off things within on a list that tells them that, you know, if a certain number of things are scored, or if they got a score out of all those issues that are raised on that list, then there are issues, there are matters of concern, you know. Notifications is usually enough for concern. If you've got an X number of notifications, then clearly something needs to be done. There needs to be an intervention. I'm not suggesting for a moment that means that the children need to be removed. But what it does mean is that action needs to be taken. And in many of these cases, action is not taken. And so as a result, the end result, in this case, a child dies. In other cases, children are harmed. In other cases, families are not helped when they really need that help. So it goes on to say, neighbours said they heard screams of Charlie's not breathing at about 1 a.m. Friday, and attempts were made to perform CPR before the girl was rushed to the Royal McEwen Hospital, but she could not be saved. The whistleblowers, I didn't notice that before, so there might be 2, 3, 4, more than one whistleblower, claims have not, the whistleblowers, no, it could be singular. Anyway, claims have not been corroborated by the minister or the department which refused to confirm details but issued a statement saying an SA Police Task Force has been established. And it's kind of like, at this point, we need to be able to say, bugger what's happening with regard to the police investigation. I'm sure the minister is not going to say anything that's outrageous that's going to impact that, but certainly could make some statements about action they're taking in order to address the problem. So they could be talking about whether this is a matter that occurred with their own staff, whether it was a matter that related to other staff, whether the staff are being investigated at this particular point in time. I'm sure they will be eventually because there'll be a coroner's inquest. What is the department actively doing to ensure that things are going to be different in the future? Now, it's a new minister, so she has every right to be able to sort this stuff out once and for all, but she won't, because there'll be people at the top, particularly the Chief Executive Officer, who will be insisting that has nothing to do with them. They'll find someone else down the ladder to blame. Or what they did in the Chloe Valentine case, they promoted the people who were responsible in the end for the decisions that were made that caused Chloe's death in the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to find two things will happen. They'll either promote them or they'll look for a scapegoat. So they might make that another agency, for example, as being the ones who should have been more aware. However, the evidence is already there apparently. 500 case notes, clearly an issue. You should have done something about it. Including, she goes on to say, all government agencies, including DCP, will be fully cooperating with the investigation and the DPC review. Different source said workers who had recently tried to visit the home had been refused entry to Charlie's mother. So there's somebody else. So there's a whole host of whistleblowers happening here. Let's find out who you are. Come and talk to the Child Protection Party. We'll do an anonymous conversation. Black your face, change your sound, do whatever we can to have a conversation with you about what actually happened, your impression. Why don't we have more workers come to us and talk to us anonymously about their experiences within the department so we can get this stuff out in the open. You know, if you care about kids and kids are dying and they're dying on your watch and you're doing nothing, then you are responsible. Silence makes you just as responsible as saying something. You know, if you're not going to say anything, then you're colluding with those people who are acting badly, or with a system that punishes families and children and punishes them by kids dying. So how drastic is that? So we need to find ways in order to address that. And I think one of the ways is for some of these whistleblowers to come forward and give us their statements. Child Protection Party, we will advocate. We advocate for parents. We advocate particularly for kids. Come forward. Let us know what's happening for you. Let us know what you know. Right? I had a woman a few months ago now who was leaving the department. A young woman, soon out of university. She went and worked for the Child Protection System, and she hated it because of the management and the way management blamed other people for what was happening, and how they would refer in denigrating ways. The staff would refer in denigrating ways to the client group or the parents that they were working with. It was a disgrace. She was so embarrassed by it that she chose to leave the department. And there are many people that make that choice. What happens is, I've talked about this before, I talked about it today actually at an Australian Association of Social Worker meeting on child protection, and that is that people who are good social workers, and there are many of them around. I personally know a lot of them, particularly through the ASW, but there are a lot of fantastic social workers around. They leave the department because they can't stand the ethics and the values that are expressed by their colleagues, and they can't have a voice. And the more they have a voice, and if they're young and they have less of a voice because they're seen as insignificant, they just don't seem to have the experience, but they might have a fantastic set of values, but they're not heard. They're encouraged to shut up, and therefore obviously a lot of those people who are really good social workers leave. Now the people that miss out because of all of that happens to be the families. You know, there's a particular social worker that I've been having a kind of a go at for years because she's just the worst social worker I've come across. Heaps and heaps of complaints. Every parent that works with her complains about her. She has no interpersonal skills whatsoever. She is horrific and should be sacked. She should not be working, but they don't. And that's an indicator as to how they view certain people within their department. And one of the reasons why they put up with some of these people is they don't believe what other people are saying, particularly, funnily enough, people like me. And they're so short-staffed anyway that they're reluctant to get rid of people, I think. Whereas they should just bite the bullet, get rid of those people that aren't working appropriately, whether it be social workers or other workers, psychologists or whatever within the department. They should put in place people who can actually oversee, who have got the appropriate ethics and values to oversee the department so that everybody becomes accountable to this one or two group of people who know the way it should be working, watch how other people are working, and then get rid of those people who are simply dead wood. Because at the end of the day, those people make lousy decisions, not based on ethical or social work principles, and children die. It is as simple as that. But no, government doesn't hear you, certainly don't hear me. So just coming back to this. So the advertiser asked Matilda 6 times about whether Child Protection Authorities had seen Charlie in their last visit, but she replied, said, I can't comment because of the... well, we don't know how many times, but we know for a fact, because she mentioned this, and it's probably longer, given there are 500 case notes, that over the last 2 years, the department has had contact with this family. When asked another 3 times to explain why the investigation prevented her from disclosing the information, she said, I'm being cautious in terms of not wanting to do anything that would deter the police from fulsomely conducting... Oh, what a load of crap. Who gives a care? I mean, we have to remember that we pay for the service, which is... like, Susan, we pay your wages. And the same with the other minister, you are public servants. I don't know if they ever get this, but public servants means that they are servants to the public. And I often think they think that they are servants to themselves first, then their party, then the department that they work for, then the public maybe, and lastly to the people they actually are supposed to represent. They've got it all asked about. They need to be responsible to the clients, the parents, the children primarily, and act accordingly, and perhaps would have a different outcome. It goes on to say, child protection is incredibly complex as a system. I hate the word complex. I often wonder what that means. You often use the word complex when you don't want other people to understand it because it's too complex for them. So, it's just complex. I and our government will be relentless in those efforts to improve the system. Deputy Commissioner Williams said Task Force Prime had been established to investigate the death, which was first made public in a press release issued Monday afternoon. We know all of that. They'd focus on the broader cause and circumstances of the death, but it was still too early to say whether the death was avoidable. Yeah, of course it was avoidable. It isn't like some random person pulled out a gun and shot her. It isn't like that. It isn't like this child had an incurable disease, for example, that no doctor or anybody else could help her with, and she died. No, she died because apparently everybody ignored her, not only just her parents or her mother, who was probably concerned about what was happening to her and what would happen to her and the rest of the children if the department found out. I would imagine that's it, but also the department knew. So, right. And the other one I wanted to raise was this one. Additionally, complex agency responsible part of Charlie's inquiry. So, they're going to run, the department is going to run this investigation parallel with the SA Police. And where's the bit I wanted to write? Additional complexity at the moment. They're inherited. So this is where, I think this is interesting. This is where Hilliard, I think, is making this interesting comparison. She said, see, they used the word additional complexity for authorities. I love that. This is political talk for, we're not going to tell you because you're too dumb to understand. But the bottom bit here is the bit I want to look at. This is the additional complexity at the moment that were inherited from the previous government. Now, we do need to raise the issue here that Labor Party were in power some years ago before the Marshall government, and Susan Close was the minister. Now, they did nothing, or even though I must confess, David Waterford, who was the chief executive, did do something. He was pretty good, I thought, but not enough, nowhere near enough. But so when they were in power before, they did nothing, and these things happened to them, like Chloe Valentine. So there's additional complexity at the moment that we've inherited from the previous government. I don't know what that complexity possibly is that they've inherited. They've inherited a system that they were familiar with because they've worked in it before, so it shouldn't be all that new to them. And it's been around for a long time. A decision to put the family services that work with the family into a different department, not child protection. That's been tried before, and that was part of the Nyland report, was to suggest. I don't see what difference it's going to make, quite frankly. Workers, DHS probably, in my view, is a little bit more competent than Child Protection Services. I don't dispute that. I know some of those people in DHS do a fabulous job. But DHS deals with early intervention primarily. So if early intervention is so critical, and it is, why isn't it that DHS had become more involved earlier? And why are they saying now that they need... So this is like they're offering an excuse. So the excuse that they're offering now is that the Department of Human Services and Department of Child Protection are two separate entities. And as a result of that, Child Protection is wrong, DHS is right, and Department of Human Services is the place where a lot of this stuff should be. It has been there for years, so that's a load of crap. So she goes on to say, one of the questions I have of this investigation that will be undertaken by the Department of Premier and Cabinet is that change the way in which there were interactions between the people who decide to remove a child and the people who are going in and work with the family. DHS, that's been their role. I'm telling you that for a long, long time. So that should not be something new and should be something that we worry about. The issue is that DHS may not have been called in to work with this particular family early enough. So the question is, what other services were available? The CFAN, there's a whole range of services with NGOs that come in, connecting families, and others that work with families. Why weren't they called in? And it's usually the department, DCP, who calls them in. Has this caused additional anxiety? So it says here that they're responsible for early intervention services, DHS. So they talk a bit about that. Close said she was frustrated and concerned. I'm sure she is, now that they're caught out. Was frustrated and concerned that the government had multiple eyes on Charlie's family, but she refused to say how many notifications were on the family's file, citing the ongoing police investigation. Well, we know. There was a stack of them. So what does all of this mean? It means that we are being told something that we've known for many, many years, and that is the system is stuffed. And that it unfortunately, and this is so sad, that it takes the death of a child in order for us to be notified, to be made aware. And as I said before, one of my concerns is that over time this will kind of just slip away to the point whereby not all that many people will be interested or even care about what's happening to this family and to other families. So what I do is I urge you to, firstly, if you're watching this on, I noticed my photo, my picture on, don't know how that's looking for you on Facebook, but it looks a bit blurry. I ask you to subscribe to our page if you're watching on YouTube. I'm also sending this to my own personal channel. So those people watching it there, if you wouldn't mind subscribing to that channel as well. Let us know what you think. We got some great comments yesterday when I posted initially about this story. So please feel free to make more comments. I go through them, I have a look at them, I find them very, very helpful. So please let us know what you think. And if you've got cases that are of concern to you and you want to contact Child Protection Party, please feel free to do so. We'll do what we can to help you. So take care of yourself, everybody, and make sure